On Capitol Hill, moments of intense debate are not a new phenomenon. But every now and then, something unexpected happens that breaks through the noise and captures national attention and sparks widespread conversation. In this case, it's Jasmine Crockett and Byron Donalds.
And if we continue to put people into office, and that even means some of our skinfolk who definitely are not our kinfolk, such as Byron Donalds.
In a recent congressional hearing, Representative Jasmine Crockett delivered a pointed response to comments made by fellow lawmaker, Congressman Byron Donalds. At the center of the controversy, a statement made by Donalds during a Turning Point USA event in which he claimed that black families were stronger during the Jim Crow era.
You see, during Jim Crow, the black family was together. During Jim Crow, more black people were not just conservative, because black people always have been conservative-minded, but more black people voted conservatively. And then H.E.W., Lyndon Johnson, and then you go down that road, and now we are where we are. What's happened in the...
And then you go down the road where we are today.
The remark quickly drew criticism, not only from members of Congress, but from journalists, historians, and citizens across the country. To many, it represented a profound misunderstanding of history, and to others, it raised broader concerns about representation, race, and political identity. Representative Jasmine Crockett, who is a freshman Democrat from Texas, used her platform to push back firmly and unapologetically. Her words quickly went viral and resonated with millions of individuals who felt that Donald's comments had crossed a line.
Person that you want to settle down with and be married to ain't gonna be no family because she's 44 years old, but would you want to be with her? Is that somebody?
The conversation that followed far beyond the Congress. On social media, videos, memes, and commentary flooded platforms like TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube. Some defended Donalds, citing his right to express personal views. Others viewed the comment as historically inaccurate and deeply offensive. But beyond the headlines and social media buzz, this moment highlights a much deeper divide. One about race, memory, and the role black lawmakers play in shaping political narratives. This is the full story behind the viral exchange. Who is Byron Donalds? Why did Jasmine Crockett's words hit so hard? And what does this clash reveal about American politics in 2025? Before the headlines and the viral clip, Byron Donalds was already a rising figure in Republican politics. Donalds grew up in a single-parent household and later attended Florida State University. He was born in Brooklyn, New York, and worked in finance before eventually entering the political scene in Florida. In 2016, he was elected to the Florida House of Representatives, and by 2020, he secured a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives representing Florida's 19th congressional district.
In the past 6 years, we've made tremendous strides both in Florida's economy and in job growth. By 2030, we're expecting 6 million more citizens and need an additional 2 million jobs. I would focus on alleviating the current legal climate we have in our state, as well as revamping and also removing some outdated regulation. We always want to strive to have clear rules to the road, but those rules should never stop us or hinder us from being competitive in the global economy.
From the beginning, Donalds aligned himself closely with the Trump wing of the Republican Party. He has proudly branded himself as a MAGA Republican, tackling issues such as tax cuts, deregulation, border security, and strong support for law enforcement.
Also with us is New York native and current U.S. Congressman. He's hot as a pistol. Oh, boy, he has a future. And he's a great friend of mine, Byron Donalds. Come up, please, Byron. Give him hell. Give him hell. Not too many people. Would you like to be VP?
Donalds has often presented himself as an independent thinker, a black conservative who is willing to go against what he calls liberal groupthink. But while his supporters view him as bold and refreshing, others see something very different. Critics, particularly within the black community, have accused Donalds of being out of touch, or worse, being used. His positions on issues like police reform, voting rights, and now his Jim Crow comments have sparked backlash and even protests in some of the communities he claims to support.
Is out here having a full-on blown meltdown. This boy is crying, and he's talking about Jasmine Crockett and what she says. First things out of his mouth is talking about liberal policy. Oh, they hate me because I'm a black conservative and I don't support liberal crazy policy.
First of all, I'm tired of that BS. First and foremost, it got nothing to do with my wife. Let's just put that right out in the open. They're mad because I'm a conservative Republican and I'm not a Democrat who believes in crazy liberal policy.
Sir, are you crazy or am I crazy? Did we not just hear you try and speak favorably of Jim Crow? Is that not what you did? And now you want to talk about liberal policy and crazy policy? I would argue that at least half, all right, at least half, because we still do have those white ignorants of the Republican Party. So at least half of the country would agree that someone supporting Jim Crow would be lunacy, would be crazy, okay? Do you not?
When Joy Reid had to call him out for that very thing and make that same point?
During Jim Crow, could your family have existed? You are in an interracial marriage. Your wife is a white conservative activist. Could your family have existed at all during Jim Crow?
No, it could not, Joy. We all know that.
I guess that's what he meant by during Jim Crow, the black family was together because they couldn't be with white people. I think that must have been because they had to be. They had no.
This is where the conversation gets more complex. While Donalds often frames his views as personal conviction, some argue that his rise in the GOP reflects a deeper pattern. A party embracing visible black faces to push controversial policies, without addressing the real issues affecting black Americans. This phenomenon, which is known as tokenism, describes the strategic elevation of minority individuals to give the appearance of inclusivity, while maintaining the status quo. In Byron Donalds' case, many argue that he's being positioned as a political shield, someone whose identity is used to deflect criticism from a party often accused of racism.
There are people in this country who still want to pretend racism doesn't exist. In fact, there are black people like Byron Donalds who still wants to pretend racism is not a problem in this country. He was asked if there is any more systemic racism or if racism is a problem in this country, and he said, no, it's not.
Do you believe that America still has like a problem with racism, like systemic racism?
No, I think that the country did. I mean, that's obvious. Of course. We definitely did, but I don't think so anymore.
And listen, I've said this many times. Byron Donalds has to bootlick and buck dance for Republicans because if he doesn't, he becomes irrelevant to the Republican Party. He has to put a black face on their racism because if he doesn't, they'll throw his ass out the door. He is a useful idiot.
As we've seen before, this role comes with limitations. While Donalds has received public praise from party leaders, he's also faced repeated roadblocks. Despite being floated for Speaker of the House, he never gained traction. Even discussions of a possible VP nod seemed more symbolic than serious. The question remains, is Byron Donalds genuinely shaping the future of the GOP, or is he simply being used to protect it from necessary accountability? Before she became one of the most talked about voices in Congress, Jasmine Crockett was already making waves in Texas. A civil rights attorney turned lawmaker, Crockett entered politics with a mission to stand up for marginalized communities, confronting injustice and refusing to be silenced.
As you were talking about the struggles of our farmers, because I've been listening to my farmers talk about the droughts, and I am from the state of Texas where we are enduring droughts, floods, as well as freezes. So we have everything as a result of the thing that really does exist called climate change. So this is not what we should be doing. I don't even know why we fighting with Greenland. Why we fighting with Greenland? We fighting with Canada. We fighting with Mexico. Yet we in love with Putin. What is happening? Like, this is not America. This is a terrible nightmare. Somebody slap me and wake me the up.
Jasmine Crockett, known for her sharp intellect and unapologetic delivery, quickly became a standout on Capitol Hill. And when the moment came to speak out, she didn't hold back.
Jasmine Crockett is now coming under fire for a newly uncovered clip where she takes her offensive rhetoric to another level. Here's what she had to say about Congressman Byron Donalds.
If we continue to put people into office, and that even means some of our skinfolk who definitely are not our kinfolk, such as Byron Donalds, who are going to continue to say that, the fact that you sitting around talking about life was better under Jim Crow, is this because you don't understand history? Or literally it's because you married a white woman and so you think that whitewashed you? I'm not really sure.
It all started with a comment made by Representative Byron Donalds suggesting that black families were more together during the Jim Crow era. His words were met with outrage, and then came Crockett's response. In less than 2 minutes, she delivered a pointed, passionate takedown that quickly went viral. But this wasn't just about politics, it was personal. For many, Crockett's words echoed the frustration that was felt across generations. She didn't just respond, she dismantled the logic behind Donald's claim, exposing how dangerous and misleading such statements can be.
I had to go around the country and educate people about what immigrants do for this country, or the fact that we are a country of immigrants.
Right.
The fact is, ain't none of y'all trying to go and farm right now. Okay, so I'm lying. Raise your hands.
When the wheels fall off.
You're not. We done picking cotton. We are. You can't pay us enough to find a plantation.
Social media lit up. TikTok creators, Twitter threads, and Instagram reels flooded in. Many praising Crockett for saying what needed to be said, boldly and without hesitation.
I think that's pretty crazy liberal policy. You want to know why I think it's pretty crazy policy? What's going on right now in this administration? Let me get this straight. Riddle me this, Batman. How are you going to tank the economy and then cut social programs? What do you think that leads to? Do you think that's America first? Because I don't see how that's America first. We see that millions of Americans aren't seeing that as America first. So I would argue that's really the crazy policy. But he goes on further with his stupidity. Bro, man, this boy is hollering from the rooftops. He's hollering so loud. He goes on and does the obvious. I was expecting it. He goes on, lists off a whole bunch of Democrats who have white husbands or white spouses, right? He says, Ketanji Brown Jackson has a white husband. Kamala Harris has a white husband. So-and-so has a white husband.
Kamala Harris, her husband's white. Ketanji Brown Jackson, her husband's white. They not say anything about those two dudes or the fact that they married white men because they follow Democratic liberal ideology. What?
Listen. Let me break this down for all you white ignorants. Let me just break this down for you. And you black ignorants as well. The issue is not the spouse. The issue is what type of spouse.
But Jasmine Crockett's influence goes deeper than one moment. Her tone, her style, and her authenticity resonate with people who are tired of sanitized, scripted politics. She speaks plainly, but she speaks with power. She doesn't pivot. She doesn't dodge. She confronts.
Remember the first time I saw Byron Donalds at a CBC event, and I was like,
I said the same thing.
I was like, sir, you, and so, he like, oh, sis, he changes it up.
What Jasmine Crockett represents is more than just a voice in the room. She represents a shift, a generation of leaders who aren't interested in playing politics as usual. For many, her viral moment wasn't surprising. It was long overdue. And in this particular exchange, it wasn't just about proving a point. It was about reclaiming the narrative, about Black history, about dignity, and about who gets to speak for the community. Her words didn't just go viral, they struck a nerve. On June 4, 2024, Congressman Byron Donalds stood before an audience at Turning Point USA and made a statement that immediately triggered widespread backlash. Referring to the Jim Crow era, he said, quote, "During Jim Crow, the Black family was together." He then added that, more black families were married during that time than now. Here's a tweet from Candidly Tiff, an ex-user. During Jim Crow, Byron Donalds wouldn't be able to legally have an interracial marriage, vote, be in Congress, or have his felony record sealed and expunged. He is a damn glad Hakeem checked him. At first glance, the remark may appear to be a critique of modern family dynamics, but in context, it struck a nerve. Not only because of the historical inaccuracy, but because of what it suggested, that there was some form of value or even nostalgia in one of the darkest periods of American history. The Jim Crow era, spanning roughly from the 1870s to the 1960s, was not simply a time of segregation. It was a time of legally enforced white supremacy. Black Americans were denied basic rights, subjected to daily humiliation, and often terrorized with violence. From lynchings to voter suppression, the state sanctioned brutality in nearly every corner of life. To reference that era in a way that implies stability or even pride is not only misleading, it's deeply hurtful to those who know the weight of that history. Social media responded swiftly. Many users questioned how a black lawmaker could elevate any aspect of an era where black voices were silenced and black bodies were disposable. Here's what Democrat Rick tweeted. As a black man, I find it reprehensible. Connecting the two, implying that Jim Crow laws were the reason black families were together, is twisted. Some were together because they had no other choices. Our grandmothers were often domestics and grandfathers worked day jobs on railroads or at docks. They were forced to stay together because financially they had no other way to survive. Jim Crow is the reason white families have 10 times the wealth that black families have. We were legally discriminated against. For this dummy to make it appear like Jim Crow was a good thing. SMH. Historians were also quick to push back. In multiple interviews, scholars emphasized that the notion of family strength during Jim Crow ignores the structural violence that was deliberately imposed on black communities. Families weren't thriving, they were surviving. In fact, many families were broken apart through economic hardship, migration, or racial violence. Stability was not a feature of the system. It was something people fought to maintain in spite of it. And let's be clear, just because marriage rates may have been higher during that era doesn't mean families were healthier or stronger. Context matters. In the 1940s and 1950s, economic and legal obstacles made it nearly impossible for black women to access the job market independently. Divorce was rare not because of family cohesion, but because of limited options and resources. That's not strength. That's survival under pressure. What makes Donald's comment more concerning is that it aligns with a recurring narrative often used to downplay the brutal realities of America's racial past. By isolating one data point, like marriage rates, and detaching it from the oppression of the time, it paints a misleading picture, one that comforts the powerful while confusing or offending those who've lived through its consequences. It also reveals how historical revisionism can creep into mainstream politics. When a black congressman lends legitimacy to myths about the Jim Crow era, it doesn't challenge oppression, it reinforces it. Representative Jasmine Crockett's response, which followed shortly after, was more than just a rebuttal. It was a correction, a demand for honesty in a room where far too many have learned to manipulate history for applause. This wasn't just a misstatement, it was a moment that reminded us why understanding history matters. Not for shame, but for truth. Because without truth, the past can be twisted. And when the past is twisted, the future suffers. This moment wasn't just about a controversial quote. It was about what it means to be a black conservative in America today, and how race is used, intentionally or not, within the political system. In recent years, we've seen a visible rise in black conservatives gaining national attention. From commentators like Candace Owens to public figures like Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, the Republican Party has highlighted these voices as examples of diversity within their ranks. But critics argue that this visibility is often strategic, that these voices are not elevated because of ideological merit alone, but because they serve a useful purpose, to echo party talking points while deflecting accusations of racism. In this framework, race becomes a political tool, not a shared cultural identity. For many Black Americans, this raises questions not about individual political beliefs, but about allegiance, authenticity, and community accountability. There's a long and painful history in this country of Black voices being used to justify systems that harm Black communities. And when someone like Byron Donalds suggests that the Jim Crow era was somehow beneficial, it revives that painful legacy. It's why public reaction was swift and deeply emotional. For some, it wasn't just disagreement, it felt like betrayal. Of course, not every Black conservative embraces this role. Some genuinely believe in limited government, lower taxes, or religious traditionalism, views that span all demographics. The problem arises when identity is used as a shield rather than a lens of accountability. And that's where phrases like free thinker come into play. This term implies independence from mainstream Black thought, often used by conservative voices, suggesting that those who challenge democratic policies are somehow more intellectually liberated. But in practice, this free thinking rarely challenges power structures. It usually reinforces them. That's the paradox. Being labeled a free thinker can make one seem bold or rebellious, but when the end result consistently aligns with institutions that have historically marginalized Black people, that label becomes more about branding than bravery. Within the Black community, reactions to these figures are far from uniform. Some support them, viewing them as courageous for going against the grain. Others see them as opportunists, individuals who've traded solidarity for influence. Byron Donalds finds himself in the middle of that tension. To conservative media, he's often portrayed as proof that the Republican Party is evolving. But to many others, he represents a familiar pattern, a Black figure elevated just far enough to help the system, but never far enough to change it. The reality is that identity and ideology don't always align. Being Black doesn't automatically mean being progressive, but it does come with a history and a responsibility to understand that history, especially when you're speaking on public platforms that shapes the national narratives. At its core, this isn't just about Byron Donalds or Jasmine Crockett. It's about a much larger conversation about race, power, and the complicated role that Black voices play in American politics. When Donalds praised the family structure under Jim Crow, it wasn't just a misreading of history. It symbolized something much deeper. It echoed a pattern, one where select Black figures are elevated not because they challenge power, but because they reinforce it. It's not new. In every generation, there have been individuals chosen, not by the community, but by the system, because their words align with the interests of those in control. Malcolm X once said, "Just because a cat has kittens in the oven, that don't make them biscuits." Not every Black person in power is working in the interest of Black people. And when someone uses their platform to rewrite the trauma of their ancestors, that truth becomes impossible to ignore. This moment also forces a reckoning. What does authentic representation really look like? Is it skin color alone? Or is it someone who stands firm even when it's inconvenient in defense of justice, truth, and historical reality? The cost of performative politics is high. When someone gains power by dismissing their community's lived experiences, it leaves a scar. Not just on our memory, but on our momentum. The truth is, Byron Donalds isn't just being criticized for his politics. He's being questioned for the role he's playing. A role many recognize as being curated and managed by a party that often speaks against the very community he represents. This is why Crockett's response resonated. It wasn't just about disproving a statement. It was about defending history, defending reality, and pushing back against a recurring cycle where Black figures are propped up as shields for regressive policy. In that moment, she wasn't just speaking for herself. She was speaking for a generation tired of being gaslit, tired of being told that oppression wasn't so bad, tired of seeing their stories twisted for political gain. So whether this clash fades from the news cycle or continues to spark discussion, It left behind an important reminder that real representation isn't about optics. It's about accountability. And no matter the title, position, or party, if you rewrite the truth, someone will stand up and set the record straight. What do you think? Was this a turning point or just another viral moment? Like this video and drop your opinion in the comment. Subscribe for more stories that dig beneath the headlines. Stay informed, stay critical, and stay engaged.